it's Regina. Welcome back to my haunted library, or is rapidly becoming my fantastical library because I have just been so into fantasy, and I'm dressed up like a Galadriel today because I've finally finished all of the Lord of the Rings. Ah! It took me a little over a month, and I pretty much read consistently. I did take a break. I read a couple other things, but I was pretty much in Middle Earth for that entire time. I also watched all 3 films, and some of the books I listened on audiobook, but as I read. Like, I found sometimes where I got a little bogged down or I was confused. I think it was because I was just trying to read too fast, and it's really kind of a work that kind of needs to slow down. So the audiobook that I found on YouTube was actually great, and except for one video that seems to be missing all of the audio for some reason, but there's a really nice group of audiobooks on YouTube for free, no ads, and it's really well done with all the voices and sound effects. So I found that although I didn't listen to all of it that way or read all of it that way, when I did kind of slow down and listen and read at the same time, I really got a lot out of it. If I were to read it again all the way from the beginning, which I might do, I might approach it like that, because I found that helped to really not only help me understand what was going on, but just to really absorb the language and the world. And I'm really glad I read it. It was definitely challenging in some places, but not really. The movies were, it's like a 9-hour commitment to watch the movies, and the movies, of course, don't deal with everything in the book. That would take so long. And I didn't watch the extended versions of the films. I watched the original ones. So here are my thoughts. Sorry. Oh, my God. On Lord of the Rings. The glasses really go great with this outfit. So I wrote here, I think the reason I always failed in my quest to read Lord of the Rings, starting with Fellowship of the Ring, is that I feel like it gets off to such a slow start, and I wasn't really loving Hobbits, although now I do really love the Hobbits. But and I think that when other readers have trouble getting into it, it's because of that first section. It's not like interesting. I don't know. It just didn't really grab me. But the more I read, the more I really loved it. I enjoyed all of the battle scenes, the complete immersion in Middle Earth that I experienced. It really is an incredible world, and it's so dense, and it feels real. And a lot of people have said that, and I concur. It just really feels real because it is real in this rich language. And the films, I really have to give Peter Jackson lots of props for taking that material and doing what he did with it, where he really, I think, kept in, he made some changes, but he kept in the important parts and kind of made it more dramatic, like the way he kind of changed the order of things a little bit. It did make sense, and it didn't bother me at all that it was a little different. I have to say that I really loved the whole concept of the ring and what it symbolizes, that corruption of absolute power. There's so much depth in this story, and that is like the central message, I think, for this whole thing. And then we see Gollum is like this sort of shadow of what Frodo could, or anyone could become if they allow power to corrupt them. And also that whole Gollum Schmeagol character, and it was amazingly done in the film, was great. I mean, it was just incredible. The Christian message, and I know Tolkien was a Catholic. There's definitely a lot of Christ symbolism with Frodo as this kind of Christ figure. The whole reincarnation of Gandalf, from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. The Galadriel is kind of like this Mary figure, and I really enjoyed all of that, and also like the message of the forgiveness of Frodo's at the end during the whole Shire rebellion, his reluctance to do anything violent, and to forgive Saruman twice, even though he doesn't deserve it, and he's a jerk anyway. He doesn't really accept that forgiveness. In fact, he despises them, for Frodo and the rest of the hobbits, for forgiving him. That message is a very, of course, Christian message, and it was very moving. And what else? Okay, I enjoyed the whole, obviously, like the Arthurian references. Gandalf is like a Merlin character. The idea of the land is sick until the king can be returned. I mean, these are all coming out of Arthurian legends. Everyone says, Tolkien invented this fantasy genre. Well, I mean, maybe the 20th century fantasy genre, but certainly the Arthurian legends is, and Shakespeare. I saw a lot of Shakespeare in this with Gandalf kind of like a Prospero character, and there were some other instances that I'm trying to remember. So the female characters, even though they don't get a lot of screen time, they have a lot of depth, and I did enjoy the archetypes, and a lot of the characters are archetypes, not just the female characters. But you have Galadriel, and she's like the Madonna figure, the mother figure, this pure essence of feminine light and goodness and kindness and strength, with kind of juxtaposed with Shelob, the spider monster, who is one of my favorite characters. And I felt like that scene in the book was a lot more powerful than in the movie. In the movie, they move it into the third film, I think, just to make the narrative just more exciting. But the description of that spider monster in The Two Towers is just so powerful. And it is the dark feminine archetype, this nasty, her eggs and her, she's like this feckin' earth creature, selfish, devouring, and evil. Arwen, of course, is given much more of a developed character in the film, which I thought was great. I'm glad that he did that, because I think we kind of needed to see her more, and she's such a cool character. And she gives a really beautiful, she has a really beautiful presence in this as a character. So I really liked the character of Eowyn. I mean, she is the most developed, female. Well, she's a human. She's probably the only female human. Well, I guess there's a hobbit that's human. I mean, there maybe one or two more. But she, I love how she gets to enter the fray and kill the witch king of the Nazgul. I don't know if he has a name. I didn't put it down. That's kind of a cool, Macduff turn where, no man can kill him. Well, what about a woman? And that's really great in the book and also in the film. And, I like the fact that even though she's in love with Aragorn, she ends up happily ever after, we assume, with Faramir. I enjoyed the chivalry of the romances. In another story, Aragorn would have used her and dumped her, but he didn't. He was honorable. I mean, that's another thing about this work. This entire work is about honor, and the theme of being honorable is a very powerful one in this work. And the dishonor in the case of Gollum, who is just, he doesn't do things honorably, and so he kind of pays the price for that. So great adventure story, lots of spiritual depth. I guess this is why it's considered such a great classic. I finally understand. It was great. I give it all 5 stars, all 3 books. And I really only feel like after having read it, watched the film, listened to some of the audio, read some material online about it, that I'm only really scratching the surface. I don't think that I will ever go into real depth with this story, only because, there's only so much time, and I have a lot of books I want to read. But I will definitely revisit at least the films. I may go back and read the book, God help me, again. Just looking at some people's videos online and who are really into it, they're like, I read it every year. I mean, I can't imagine doing that. But I did have kind of a weird feeling at the end when I was happy it was over, but I almost had an impulse to start over and read from the beginning, just because I knew I had missed so much. So yeah, I finished my quest. I did it. I read Lord of the Rings, and if any of you, and of course I'm reading it very late in life, but if any of you guys haven't read it, I encourage you to do it. So the next time I'm at a fancy cocktail party and this Lord of the Rings things come up, and I don't have to just pretend that I read it, I can actually say truthfully that I have read it. So So I'm happy about that. And who knows, I may revisit it sometime. Anyway, I'm schwitzing in this wig. I got to get out of here. So thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon.